evening, everybody. We're group 5, and we're going to talk to you guys tonight about chapter 3, which is making the most of your message. I'm Dane. I'm going to talk to you guys about getting the audience's attention.
I'm Lawrence. I'm going to tell you how to keep the audience's attention.
And I'm Adam. We're going to teach you about how to help them improve recall, as well as consider which medium to choose when giving a presentation.
When getting the audience's attention, you want to hook the audience. So you want to start with a grabber. You want to include a grabber. A grabber gets the audience's eyes and ears on you and kind of begins to get their attention. Some grabbers can take a lot of preparation, mainly humorous grabbers, because you want to be aware of who's in your audience and you don't want to try not to offend anybody. Other grabbers, such as statistics, facts, don't take as much preparation. Next thing you want to do is create a favorable impression. You want to explain why you find the topic intriguing and why you have such an enthusiasm for it, and you want to try and convey that enthusiasm on the audience. Next thing you want to do is end with emphasis. Endings aren't as powerful as beginnings, so you want to, they're merely reminders of time is running out, that the presentation is coming to an end. So you want to use phrases such as to wrap up or let me end by saying. These phrases call attention to the points that you want to reinforce to the audience. The next thing you can do is shine a bright light on a key point. You can do this by flagging a soundbite. What this is you want to use signals such as if you remember nothing else, remember that, or here's what is critical. A flag is a signal to pay attention to what you are saying if you're about to reemphasize a point. The next thing you can do is craft a relevant story to what you're presenting. You can start with a flow, which is a single scrap of info that gestures the audience. You can start with, I know a client who, or I remember when. And once you put that float out there, you can begin to add sensory details to that flow, such as who, what, when, and why. When you add these sensory details, it should take the listener from the beginning of the story to the end of the story. The next thing you want to do is create a star moment. You want to be careful creating star moments. Make sure they're not too gimmicky because it could hurt your credibility. And Bill Gates had a famous star moment one time when he was trying to make a point about malaria, and he released a jar full of mosquitoes into an auditorium. The next thing you want to do is you want to help the audience resist distractions. And you can follow this resist model right here. The first thing you want to do is point out what is relevant. You can do this by flagging a key message, explaining what's in it for them, or offer a solution to a pressing problem. The next thing you want to do is make an emotional connection with the audience. You can do this by sharing personal information about what makes you likable. You can refer to something that makes you laugh, or you can use photos or video clips to capture feelings. Next thing you want to do is add an element of surprise. You can include a shocking statistic or detail. Make a noticeable change in your delivery style, or share a fact about the topic that surprises you while you're researching it. The next thing you want to do is find a way to include people. You can ask them to help solve a relevant problem. You can let the audience choose what you speak about next, or you could get the people to talk with someone sitting next to them and generate conversation in the audience. The next thing you want to do is engage their senses. You can add sensory language to examples or sound bites. You can use visuals that feature images or emotion, or bring a prop that people can see, hear, smell, or even touch. And the last thing you want to do is create some tension. One way to do this is to remain silent longer than seems comfortable to the audience. You can include a video clip that features conflict, or you can make people vote on a controversial issue. And with that, I'll pass it over to Lawrence.
All right, thank you, Dane. All right, so Dane told y'all how to get the audience's attention, how to grab their attention. So I'm going to tell you how to keep it once you have it. So the first, most important thing in business presentations, like in business writing, is to be direct. In business writing, you put your bottom line up front, and you want to do the same thing with your presentations. You want to give your conclusions, your recommendations at the beginning when you have your audience's full attention. So there's 3 reasons for this. First of all, it's easy to follow. You put too many details, too many facts before you get to the point, you're going to lose your audience every time. The second reason is that it saves time. So if they already know what the bottom line is, then you can go through your points faster and they can follow along with you. And the third reason is that it focuses on the audience's interest. So a lot of times you're giving a presentation to executives, more than anything, they want to have the bottom line right up front. If you wait too long to give it to them, you're gonna lose them every time. Okay, so you wanna do this whenever possible, but there are some times to be indirect, okay? So 3 of those are that if your decision makers insist that you have an indirect presentation. The second would be is that it's dictated by cultural norms. So in some cultures, it's rude to be too direct, to give your recommendations and conclusions at the beginning. So you want to go ahead and follow those cultural norms, know your audience, and so if your audience has those cultures in it, you want to follow those cultures. And then the last reason to be indirect is if your message is controversial, if you're going to have resistance to what you're saying, it's good to go ahead and start making arguments and points before you get to your conclusions, so that you have the ability to start to sway the audience and convince them before you make your points. All right, so another way to hold your audience's attention is to give them the information in chunks. So we all know people's short-term memory is pretty limited. You can't get too many pieces of information all at once. So you want to keep it around 4. That's a good rule of thumb. The ways that you can deliver the information in chunks is to have logical categories. You want to know your audience. So if your audience is business students, you can have categories like strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. What makes sense to your audience? Another way to deliver the information in chunks is to use a limited number of sections. So it's 2, 3, or 4. You can maybe go to 5, but if you go beyond that, you're going to have too many sections, and it's hard for your audience to be able to keep track of it. Groups of 3, logical groups like A, B, C, beginning, middle, end, past, present, future. And then subcategories are also a good idea. Now you put subcategories under your main categories, you still want to limit those as well to 2 or 3 or 4. It gives it more structure to your presentation, but at the same time, it's not going to make it too complicated. And then the last way to use chunks of information is to have 2-sided options. These are contrasts, and some examples are problem solution, before after, input output, concern response. There's a lot of different ways to do that. Okay, and now the third main way to hold the audience's attention is to have pattern and flow to the presentation. So types of patterns are topic, which lists key points. Examples would be 4 recommendations or 3 reasons to change. Another type of pattern is prioritizing by importance. So you want to arrange from least important to most important, such as rank of goals or minor to major changes. And you can also go in chronological order, or you can contrast items against each other. And you can also have process structures or location patterns where you're touring a location or a website or a POP. And then along with the pattern, you want to try to have a flow. So you have a theme, like a journey, a challenge, a project, a how-to guide. And it's important to have an agenda or overview or preview at the beginning. So you have your audience's attention at the beginning. So that's the point where you need to let them know how the flow is going to go. And that way, they'll be ready for certain sections. And that's the last point here. Inform the audience when you're starting these sections. So if you have their attention at the beginning, at the end, and it kind of goes, you kind of lose it in the middle. If you let them know each time you start a new section, you're going to start to gain their attention again. And that's the point at which you can re-engage with your audience. All right? And those are the 3 major ways that you can hold the audience's attention. Now I'm going to hand it over to Matt.
So I'm going to be talking to you about how to improve audience recall. The whole point of the presentation is to give them information. The thing you don't want to do is give them too much information. You want to force feed them a bunch of facts, statistics, and things like that. You don't want to overwhelm them. You want to be able to provide enough information that they're able to connect the dots and leave there with more than they came with. One way to do that is structure your presentation for retention. Repeat important facts and things of that nature so that they know exactly what they need to take away from it. If you have very well-crafted titles, they know what you're talking about when you get to certain sections of the presentation, so you can always go back to that if you need to re-emphasize that. One thing that also helps is if you're able to show them. Some people are visual. They have to see, not only just hear what you're saying, but actually see things. And if you're able to show them visuals, especially if it's like a hierarchy, like a chart or a graph or a diagram, I'd say some people are able to see that and comprehend it in a different way. One thing that's also helpful is if you just reinforce things by repeating. So things that if you're trying to sell someone on the idea of maybe like a nonprofit or something like that, where they're going to have to donate, you're going to want to tell them the things that are causing you to be up there in the first place. And one thing that really helps is to create a mnemonic, and that's going to be almost like just like a 3 or 4 letter phrase. Earlier we talked about STAR. Another example is AIM, which is what we've learned about in the first 3 chapters, audience and message. And then another way is if you give people breaks. The breaks allow people to digest all the information that you just told them. It also allows them to answer, to do Q&A, and they're able to ask you questions to clarify things if they get confused. The other way is just make a pause. Transitioning, I'm going to talk about consider your medium. So, depending on what type of presentation you're trying to do, you're going to want to see what medium that you're going to do. If it's a large topic, there may be the opportunity for you to have private conversations with individuals within the audience, and that way they can get more information about what you're trying to achieve. Is there a good high-tech alternative? Can it be done over Skype, podcasts, things like that? Is writing a better option? Sometimes just a pamphlet with pictures and words, that's all you really need. So I mean, those are things to consider when you're creating a presentation. It may not be important for you to be like in an audience type setting specifically. And then what are the pros and cons of each presentation? If you give a handout, they can just throw it away. So it may be better for you to be in their face and tell them and have them ask questions. So I mean, there's a lot of different variables that go into how you choose which medium. With handouts and things like that, you don't want to give them too much of a detailed handout if it's going to be in person. If you have too many slides, too many notes, it can detract from what you're trying to say. So they're going to be reading your slides or copying the whole time and not listening. So, that's one thing to keep in mind. A lot of times you can actually prepare your audience in advance, email them what you're going to show them, and then more commonly it's like handouts. As I mentioned earlier, you do have Q&A. On a larger topic, people can ask you stuff, you answer back. It helps keep the pace, and it helps keep them more engaged, because then there's a lot more things that you may not have even thought to talk about that get brought up. And then you want to layer your communication efforts. There's certain times when it's necessary to talk about the important things first, the important things last, and then to leave out information. If you're like in a company that's going through major transition, a merger, something like that, so that you don't kind of like scare all your employees, it may be easier to break it up, have smaller groups versus larger groups. And these are all the things that you're going to need to consider when you're having a presentation. So these are our quiz questions.
Would one of you read them out loud for the video?
First question is going to be, when shining a light on a key point, it is good to create a star moment. What does STAR stand for? Second question is going to be, recommendations and conclusions should be put at the blank and blank application. Third question, aim, audience intent message is an example of blank, which is used as a memory device. Fourth question, name 3 of the 6 ways to help an audience resist distractions. And then the final question is, what are 3 ways that you can organize information into chunks?